Hi. Welcome to Book Pop.
I'm Molly Fish.
I'm Jamie Anderson, and this is a podcast about books and reading.
And we have a very special guest today, Laura Ann Bird.
Welcome.
Hey.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yay.
We're happy to have you.
Thanks.
Laura is a Milwaukee native. She graduated from the University of Notre Dame with a degree in English, and she lives in Madison with her family, including her husband and 3 kids and a dog.
Mm-hmm.
All dog lovers here.
We're going to have to talk about the dog too, because it's the cutest dog and it's such a good story and ties into your book.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Dog has visited
I know.
Lake City Books.
Literally.
Oh.
Celebrity. Dog celebrity.
Laura is also an author, and her follow-up to her debut, which was Crossing the Pressure Line. But this week, she's releasing her new middle grade book, Marvelous Jackson, and it comes out September 10th. Molly and I have both read it.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you for the advance review copy.
Uh-huh.
We love that.
Thanks.
It was super cute.
Thank
I think
you.
middle grade holds a special place in both our hearts.
Mhm.
Definitely.
So it was
Mhm.
fun to revisit that.
Yeah.
The word that I would describe, which I've been waiting to say this, is sweet.
Oh,
Mhm.
It was so
Good.
sweet. And
Good.
I mean that in many ways because of
Yeah.
the baking, and it made me want to bake cookies really bad.
right.
But it was just like, I loved this little boy story. Okay, we don't have to get into that
I
now.
know we will. We'll get into it.
I don't even let her finish the bio.
I
I just
know.
kind
No,
of jump
I
into
love
it.
it. You're making me so happy right now. I'm grinning ear to ear. This is great.
But your debut, Crossing the Pressure Line, also won you
Yeah.
some awards.
Yeah.
With the Independent Book Publishers Association, the Midwest Independent Book Publishers Association, and Arts and Literature Laboratory in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So congratulations on that.
Thank
Yay.
you.
I was gonna read that one, but then this one was about baking, and I love baking, so I was like, I want to read this one too.
Yeah.
Jump in.
Yes.
I mean, they're companion books, which means, they're
Yes, I
they're
love
like
that.
linked and connected, but you
Mhm.
don't have to read one without, having read the other. You can
Right.
you can read them in whatever order you want.
Yes, it was such a cute tie-in.
Thank you.
But we have to start with the question we always start with.
Uh-huh.
What are you reading now?
Okay, that's a really big question because I'm sort of a book polygamist. I read a lot at once.
We need
Sexy.
to coin that. Sexy.
I'm a sexy reader. What can I say? I can only read one novel at a time, but I can kind of jump around with other genres.
Yeah.
And I do that a lot. I just got done. The novel I was reading was Sandwich by Catherine Newman.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Have
did you
either of
like
you
it?
read
I
that?
haven't read it, but my sister's reading it right now.
I loved it.
Okay.
It started off, I wasn't sure at the beginning. It's about a 50-something-year-old mother and wife, and she's on vacation on Cape Cod with her 2 grown children, and then her parents come, and they're sort of in ailing health. And it started off a little sweet, to use your word, Molly, but I don't know if you want sweet in an adult novel.
Right.
I was a little concerned, but it was wonderful. It got real dark real fast. Not dark in a bad way, but beautiful dark. Like unpacking a lot of things about this woman and her family, and I loved it. Like,
So you felt like it got deep enough to kind of
Yes.
counter the slower setting.
yes, yeah,
That's what I heard from a customer who had read it. They were like, it was pretty slow. It's like one of these quiet
Mhm.
novels, but then I feel like when those have a lot of depth underneath, like they can still be really powerful.
absolutely.
Cool.
And I think women who have grown children and who are taking care of parents and who are going through menopause, this book will really resonate. I loved it.
Can you
Okay.
give us a quick synopsis of it?
Well, this woman and her family are on vacation. It takes place over the course of 1 week, and they're in this ramshackle cottage on the ocean. Like there's a failing septic system, so there's problems with the toilet.
Mhm.
Her mother is not doing well. The son may or may not have knocked up his girlfriend. Like there's a lot going on, but yet it is a very quiet novel.
But it's kind of those relatable family problems
Yes.
that you're like, oh yeah,
Yes.
this could happen to me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I dog-eared a lot of pages and underlined a lot of
Mm.
lines. I think there's a lot to get out of that book. I loved it.
So you're an annotator.
I am. Yes, which
Ooh.
is a problem
Uh-huh.
when my book comes from the library
I was gonna say, you're a
sure.
library girl.
I'm
How
such
could
a
you be an
library-
annotator?
Well, when I own the copy,
Mm.
I annotate like crazy. Like anyone who's borrowed a book from me knows it's mine because there are dog-eared pages, there are things everywhere, notes, all the things. Library books, obviously, you can't do that.
Mhm.
But I can't even believe I'm confessing this. I got my hand slapped by the library, which is funny because I'm a library girl. But a couple of years ago, I returned some books and I was checking out some books, and the librarian had my account up on the screen, and she said, "Actually, wait, there's a flag here for you." So I'm sitting there, I'm like, "What?" And she clicks through her computer and she said, "You need to stop dog-earing the pages of our library books." And I mean, I'm such a rule follower, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm
Oh,
so sorry. I know. So I really try not to do that. But like, you know, if I'm out and about and I'm reading and I don't have something to like tuck in the book to remind me of a certain page, I just a tiny little dog ear.
We'll hook you up at our annotation station that we have with some of those
Okay.
like transparent tabs and stuff. That's what I've started using because then you can just take it out and it's like it was never there.
Mhm.
I know I need to get some of those.
Just
But
keep
then
it
you
in
have to
your purse.
carry them around
Just
with
keep
you.
it
I
in your
know. I should just
purse.
keep them on my person
Yeah.
at all times.
Yeah.
They're on a sheet and they're thin enough that it could even be a bookmark.
It's a bookmark. Yeah, you use it as a bookmark and then you
Okay.
can just grab one.
Mhm.
That's what I did with your book.
On behalf of the Madison Public Library,
Right.
thank you
We're
for
just
that public
trying to
service
keep
announcement.
you on the right side of the law, okay?
With the
I know.
library, especially.
I know.
Yeah.
And I'm a board member, which is really funny. Like I walk in there and I'm like, ooh, I'm the one that got busted.
You're a rebel. You're
Right?
the rebel
I know,
board
rebel.
member.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
hilarious.
There's actually another book I want to talk about too,
Yeah,
if
definitely.
I can.
Yes.
The other book that I just finished also, and you're probably hearing a lot about it, was God of the Woods.
Oh, yeah.
By Liz Moore.
We have also read it.
Yep. We loved it.
Did you love
Yeah.
it?
Just loved it.
We had a used copy come in today. It lasted an hour on our shelves.
And then one of our regulars literally called and was like, save that for me because they saw it on our website that we got a
Yeah.
used one. And I mean, they go so fast.
Yeah, with good reason.
with good
It's
reason.
the book of the summer, though. I think really it
Yeah.
is like hyped. But it's like the hype is real.
Mhm.
I totally
loved
think
it.
the hype is real.
Yeah.
I'm very active on Instagram, and once in a while you'll see these Instagram darlings, they're
Yes.
called, you know, books that everyone's posting about. And I tread carefully when I pick up those books because I'm always worried, like, is the hype real?
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I like literary fiction, meaty literary fiction. And so if something doesn't live up to that, like, but this one absolutely did. I thought it was riveting.
Yeah.
It gave me like, work with me here, like girl with a dragon tattoo vibes, but in the Adirondacks. Like,
Okay.
like fighting the patriarchy.
Yes.
Like dark. I loved it.
I did too.
Must read.
I really loved all the characters. We did kind of recap it on our last episode because it was one of our favorite books
Mhm.
that we read of the summer. And we did like a summer reading recap. But I'm sure there's stuff we haven't talked about with it because I mentioned I really loved like the Polish female cop character.
Yes.
I was
Mhm.
obsessed with her. And I just loved the timeline and the way the whole book is framed. I thought it was so smart.
Yeah.
And Jamie listened to it. So she had a whole nother experience.
Oh, who was the narrator? Do you
Oh, that's a
remember?
good question. No, I
Good
can't
voice, though?
remember. Great voice. And also like did the Polish accents very well.
Really?
And, yeah. And you talked about how each chapter there's like this timeline and it has the perspective of who the
Mhm.
chapter's from and then where it is in the timeline taking place. And on audio, it basically just says the name of the character and then the year, but it was still really easy to follow that along. I do kind of wish that I had that visual and seeing the whole timeline, and that would have made a difference, but I loved listening to it. I probably finished it in 3 days.
Mhm.
I read it like obsessively.
Mhm.
I couldn't put it down.
Put it down.
Truly, I loved it. I loved the 70s vibe. You know, it takes place in the
Mhm.
70s.
Definitely.
Was it 76? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. But really strong sense of place and time. She nailed it.
Yeah,
She really did. And the tension builds, and there's so many different things going on in terms of like the classism and the just the politics of this town. I loved the camper characters. Well, I guess like the camp counselor characters.
Mhm.
I loved the character of Vic and his daughter and how he's trying to help carve out this alternative lifestyle for her so that she can, and like how they they're really delicate with that character too, and not, which I feel like was almost a a sign of the times, right? Because back then there wasn't like a label for a woman who wanted to have short hair and live in the woods and no husband and was really outdoorsy, and it just is like this label-less person, and the character was so real and fleshed out, and I just and still beloved by these people. It was so good.
Right. All those layers of
So many layers.
sexuality too, and how you identify and how you are in the world and how different things were back in the 70s.
Exactly.
I think we take a lot for granted now, but you read a story like that, exactly like you said, Molly. And she really had to carve a place for herself, but really powerful.
I know. All those characters, and then just the switching, you know, the perspective switching with the mom and the grandfather and it was masterful.
It was masterful.
The way she unfolds it and all the twists and turns, because you really get taken on a ride.
You do.
The mother character, just, I can't stop thinking about her, Alice.
Yeah.
When she, like, because you follow her for such a long period of time.
Right.
Over
She's
her life.
really the character,
driving character.
right? The driving character
Yeah.
from the entire timeline.
And by the end of it, you just feel so hard for her.
When not one, but both
Both
of
of
her
her
children go missing, and for wildly different reasons.
Right.
I mean, that's the crux of the whole book, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Us too.
Yeah.
Us too.
Good choice.
Yeah, thank you. I have a couple more. I'm going to throw in a nonfiction because I told you
Yes.
I'm a book polygamist. I read across genres. So I just finished this amazing book by Danielle Friedman. She's a journalist, and it's called Let's Get Physical: How Women Discovered Exercise and Reshaped the World. And I loved it. She examines how the world of exercise has changed for women since the 1950s in our country. This is probably something I had never thought about, and I take it for granted that I can go out and run on the street if I want to, or I can do a marathon, not that I really want to, but I can go to bar class, I can go to yoga class. It was not always that way for women in this country. Women were told not to run because our uteruses would fall out.
Oof.
Wow.
Or uteri. Do you say I don't know what the plural of uterus is. But
I'm
truly,
stumped.
Danielle Friedman does all this research about how women were really kept down when it came to exercise.
Wow.
And she looks at the figures, the women throughout history, including Jane Fonda.
Yeah.
Another woman who brought yoga kind of to the US. All these people who paved the way for us. And it's riveting. I loved it.
So
That's
cool.
super fascinating.
Great book.
It reminds me of there was an Apple TV show called Physical about like an 80s
Oh, yeah.
person,
Jazzercise
right?
or-
Jazzercise person, like a la Jane Fonda. And I feel like I learned a little bit about like the industry, and I was so fascinated, and I kept thinking the whole time, like, I want to know more about
You absolutely should read
how
this book.
that
The woman who created Jazzercise is one of the chapters in this book. They devote a whole chapter to her.
Wow.
fascinating.
Yeah. So that's really good. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I like that you brought us some nonfiction because we're such fiction girlies that we
But I love
Yes,
nonfiction when I
absolutely.
find one that I want to read.
Mhm.
It's when it's something I'm really interested in, and I feel like there's just so much out there that I'm not interested in.
but having a recommendation does a lot.
It does.
And I also will point out this one has photographs in the middle. You know, when you come to like a
Cool.
section of photos in the middle of the book,
Yes.
and they're great because it's photos of all these women that she talks about throughout the book. It's really inspiring.
I love that.
I love that book. I'll also throw out a memoir that I'm still reading. So I'm not done yet, but it's by Sloane Crossley. Have you read Grief is for People?
No, but we have it. It was
yeah.
very popular this
It's
summer.
really good so far. It starts out, she's an author living in Brooklyn, I believe, and her apartment gets broken into. So this really happened in real life. She comes home and like all of her jewelry is missing. And it's not that it was worth very much, but it's the feeling of being
The violation.
the violation.
Mhm.
Yeah. But so she's dealing with all these feelings, and I'm not giving away any spoilers here because this is what the book is about. She finds out like within the month following that her best friend has taken his own life. And so then it's a whole other layer of grief and angst and how she processes through that. And she's such a great writer. She says so much with so little. She's really compelling.
Fascinating. I really love memoir in general, and I feel like there's been this like grief memoir boom recently, which is kind of, I don't know, it's hard for me. I feel like I stay away from sad books because I absorb what I'm reading so much that I'm like, do I need to be sad today? Because I will be. I will, like, especially when it's a great writer. But sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes it's worth it
Because you learn so much
feel
from
that.
it and
Right.
how to process your own grief.
Right.
And yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. I'm like you. Like I'm an empath, for better or for
Mhm.
worse. It doesn't always work in my favor.
Right.
I'm a sponge. And so I do really soak up what I'm reading.
Mhm.
And sometimes that can be hard, but I am fascinated by how people navigate these tough, unexpected times. For me, like that's what it's all about.
Mhm.
When I read, when I write, I just want to know, like, how do they do it? What self-care are they employing? How are they getting through their days? And that's why I gravitate towards memoirs, where they just hit
Definitely.
hard. But I feel like you said, I just take so much with that, like learning about resilience and hope and how I can apply that in my own life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Anything else?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, you really are.
I am. Middle grade. I have to give a shout out to middle grade.
Oh,
And I'm
good.
sure you've heard of this book, Olivetti
Yes, we
Oh, yes.
stopped this. It looks really
Allie
good.
Millington. First of all, it's instantly recognizable because it's this beautiful cover with a typewriter.
Mhm.
And out of the typewriter are growing these beautiful bright flowers.
It's so beautiful. I always face out on the shelf because
Yes.
I'm like, I want to look at this cover.
It's so good. It's about this family. There are 4 kids, and it focuses on one of the kids, Ernest, and he is having a really hard time because their mother just left without explanation. She has left the family, and no one knows why, except for the typewriter, because she had been an avid writer, and she typed up all of her stories and her notes and her experiences on the typewriter. And the typewriter decides it's time to communicate with Ernest, the child. And Olivetti is the typewriter's name. I know I have goosebumps
So
just talking about
captivating.
it.
So
My
captivating.
jaws dropped.
Oh my gosh. It's just this beautiful, quirky, completely believable premise. You read it and you just want to go out and start collecting typewriters, because suddenly I look at them differently. Like, they are a repository, if you will, of human stories. And it's amazing. It's such a good book. And, it was written for middle grade. And middle
Yeah.
grade, of course, is like that 8 to 12-year-old-ish age range. But it's one of those books, anyone can pick it up. You feel like it was just written for the world.
I remember when it was in the store new when it first came out, and I read the back of it and I thought, oh my gosh, this is such a great premise. And then I didn't realize it was middle grade until I opened it up and actually saw the size of the font. And I was like, oh, okay. It seems like such a layered concept.
Well, yeah, let's talk about middle grade in general,
Yeah.
because I feel like that way, and the premise that you set up, and even in your own books and the things that these kids are going through, there's real grief there. There's real conflict in their lives. And then the way that the story unfolds is this is real characters who have to get through stuff, but they just happen to be 10 to 12-year-olds,
Right.
or 13-year-olds. And I think about it, it's almost like that's how I want to process grief, is through reading middle grade.
Mhm.
Because it's a way where I'm like, okay, let's almost strip it back to more bare bones.
Absolutely.
And there's not the floweriness or the pretension, maybe, is what I'm looking
Exactly.
for in some of the adult books about grief, or even just novels where they're touching on similar things. So I really would love to hear about your experience with middle grade, why you write middle grade,
Yeah.
what you love about it, and what we should all be getting out of it.
Well, I love what you said about middle grade, because I agree completely. And I think that every adult should pick up a middle grade novel, because it is really refreshing, and it's less pages, it's less words inherently.
Right.
The average middle grade novel is about 45,000 words. That's a lot less than an adult novel. Every word has to count.
Yeah.
And with kids, you can't throw in a lot of backstory. You can't throw in prose that's all over the place.
Mhm.
I mean, the way I look at it is that you have to be like a crystal clear lake, a body of water. You have to be able to see to the very bottom. It just has to be, every word, every page needs to count. I just think it needs to be perfect. I think that's what the beauty of middle grade is.
Also the challenge that makes it.
Oh, it's terribly challenging.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to aim for maximum efficiency and being
Yeah.
compelling for a tougher reading
Yeah.
audience.
And clarity for a younger age.
Yeah.
I love it. And I think if you think back when you were a child and when you were reading, when you went into the library for the first time and your parents said, go pick out what you want, and you were the one picking the books off the shelves and you were the one like sitting down and discovering that love of reading, I can almost guarantee it was a middle grade novel. I mean, those were the books that like created lifelong readers in us, right?
Absolutely.
So I feel like it's just this amazing like pivotal age of children where you can get them and you can pull them in and create this love of books at a really important time in their life. And to what you were saying, Molly, middle grade novels. I mean, sure, there are some that are about like unicorns and fluffy teddy bears and rainbows and princesses, but I think that's a small minority. I think by and large, middle grade novels do not shy away from big topics because they trust that kids can handle them.
Mm-hmm.
And they can,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Sometimes better than us as adults can.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's an exciting, difficult time for kids that age, because when you think back to when you were like 8, 12, 13, you're going through a lot of changes. And there are all these competing values, right? Like you want to be super different at school and like stand out, but you still want to have friends and like fit in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't want your parents nearby embarrassing you, but at the same time, like you really want them to tuck you in at night and like give you a kiss and tell you everything's okay. So it's all these competing values. And I think in real life, they're really difficult. And I know that because I've raised 3 kids, but they make for fantastic fiction because it gets to the heart of that time.
Yeah.
And yeah. So that's why I love middle grade.
That's a great answer. It makes me want to read middle grade. And I
Mhm.
do think about books that hooked me at that age. And it's like, it is the time when you're creating that independence for yourself and making choices and getting to
Yeah.
kind of decide who you're going to be. And I love that about Jackson. We have to talk about
Yeah.
Marvelous Jackson,
Yeah.
your book coming out this week. It's just such a like redemption arc for him in this whole book. And it starts off where he's in this place, his mom has died,
Mhm.
and he's still counting the days since that happened, and he's got a tough relationship with his dad who's working a ton. It's like this is not, easy topics for
Mm-mm.
sure.
No.
And he's also doing some really like relatable, obnoxious kid things where he's kind of like getting in fights and he's sitting and playing video games all day because he's just kind of like numbing himself and doing pretty understandable things too for like a kid that age and where he's at. And then it's all about him having to choose a hobby. Like he's like, I have to make a change.
He does.
And he has to figure it out. And I just loved the choice and independence that's built in, but how he's still kind of checking in with his dad all the time and trying to like, he's actively thinking about that relationship too. It's not just like he has no agency. He has a lot of agency. I think that's a really interesting thing that as a person without children, I don't think about kids as having a lot of agency. I see kids as being barked at by their parents a lot.
Which I think they are.
Which they should be.
I'm a mom. I did that.
Like,
yeah.
But like, I just think of like, you're told what to do and you go to school and like, whatever.
Yeah.
But it was a great reminder to me that like, they do get to decide and they think and have feelings about their relationships and about their future and about their hobbies and their friends. And I just loved it. It really was like, I want to say simpler, but I don't mean it in a derogatory way. It was like a purer form of storytelling and something that brought me back to just like a time of life that I don't think about a lot as a person without children.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think I really connected with his choice of baking because, I mean, you think back to like baking with my grandma, baking cookies with my mom. Like that was such a formative time that when you're developing like a stronger relationship with your family. What made you decide to do baking?
Great question.
Okay. First of all, Jamie, before I answer that question, I just want to quick go back to something Molly said, because you hit the nail on the head when it comes to middle grade about the sense of agency. So middle graders do not want to read about adults.
Yeah,
they do
right.
not want to read about
Great
adults
point.
telling them what to do. And that's something my editor and I've worked closely on. She just keeps instilling in me like the kid needs to be the agent for change. It's the kid that's driving the narrative arc. It's the kid that's making the choices. Because otherwise you're not going to have a compelling story for a child. And so
Right.
that was very intentional
Hmm.
on my part, of course, that Jack is able to kind of navigate his own course. I mean, I feel bad for him that his dad is always gone, and I feel terrible for him that he lost his mother. But this is his chance to, like you said, like this redemption story, because he starts out giving everyone a headache. And he was in my first book as a
Mhm.
peripheral character in Crossing the Pressure Line. And he was a jerk. And that was also kind of intentional, because I did want him to have this huge growth and development through the course of Marvelous Jackson. And I think I achieved that. And so, okay, Jamie, back to you with the baking thing. It's hilarious because I don't like to bake.
Really?
This
At
is
all.
my question.
No, I don't like to
Really?
bake. No. And I get asked too about my first book. People assume I love to fish because Claire in my first novel loves to fish, and I don't fish and I don't bake. But the
Wow.
fun part about fiction is that you can research, you can ask questions, you can talk to the experts, and you can craft a compelling story. But I knew I needed to give Jack a hobby. That's the whole point, is that he's in trouble. He needs to get on the right path, or he's going to be shipped off to boarding school in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan to the Davy Crockett Institute for Outdoor Learning, which I think is hilarious.
Uh-huh.
And he is
Great.
he is not an outdoor kid. He doesn't fish. He doesn't hunt. He doesn't bike. Sorry, not bike. He does bike, not competitively, but he's not an outdoor kid. So he needs to find something to kind of tether him to his life. And so I thought for a long time, like, what's a hobby that I could give him? And I was all over the place. I'm like, hip hop dancing, chess. But it had to be the right thing, because I'm going to be the one writing this over the course of a long period of time. So I have to kind of enjoy what he's going to do. And so baking seemed like this amazing option, because I know of so many kids that love to bake, which I find mind-boggling because I don't like to bake. I'm the one who got invited to a holiday cookie exchange and like outsourced it to a friend of mine. She baked my cookies for me, literally. But I thought, hey, we can have some fun with this, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't have to love to bake, but I can put myself in his shoes, and the sprinkles, the dough, the cupcakes, the cakes. I mean, it's just so bright and fun.
Yes.
And he loves it. And so I think a lot of kids are going to be able to relate to that.
Absolutely. And it also connects him to his mom and helps him
Yes.
get over that loss.
Yes.
And you can see that arc for the character as he's going through, his grief.
Right. It was something that he used to do with his mom when he was little. And he had kind of forgotten about that. He had forgotten about the power of baking until he starts doing it with some new friends. And it like all comes back to him in this rush. And it's, I think, a very sensory moment for him.
Yeah.
So I
for
hope when
sure.
you're reading it that you can like smell the cinnamon and sugar and smell the butter, and you can feel the flour on your hands. I mean,
Totally. And the
Yeah.
names, I was
Of the
like,
cookies?
the names of the
Yes.
cookies were so cute. And I was like, did she make these
I
up?
did.
They're so good.
Thank you.
But then you had recipes in the back.
Yes.
And I was like, wait, vanilla blooms are like a real
Yes.
thing. So some of them are
Yes.
real.
Molly, I did
tell me
something
all about
really
this.
fun. So I made up all of these names going through it. I love making
Uh-huh.
up names for like candy and the cakes and the cookies. It's all made up.
Such good names.
But I thought as we were getting closer to like publication and all the things, I thought I want recipes in the back of this book. So I reached out to 3 bakeries in Wisconsin,
Oh, wow.
and I asked them, like, would you develop a recipe for my book based on the things that Jack makes in the
Oh
story?
my gosh.
That's so cool.
Yes.
So they're original.
They are original recipes. So Bloom Bake Shop in Madison, Wisconsin
Love
came
it.
up with the vanilla blooms. And so I had given them, I should say, each, like they got a list of every recipe that I mentioned in the book or alluded to,
Yeah.
right? And I said, I don't care which one, like just pick one.
one.
Like pick whatever, because I know this is a big deal to task a bakery with like a custom
Yeah.
recipe for me and my book. But they all did it. So again, Bloom did the vanilla blooms, which I think is a lovely tie on their name.
Perfect.
Mhm.
McCready Artisan Bread Company in Egg Harbor came up with the
Yeah.
Whimsy Diddles. So
Whimsy
think
Diddle.
like Snickerdoodle. That's kind of what I had in mind.
Yes.
But Jenny McCready of McCready Bread, she adds a little twist to the recipe, which I thought was brilliant. And I'm getting so much feedback from people who have made them already. And they're like, oh my gosh, these are wonderful.
People have made them and are telling you about it?
Oh yeah. People are posting about it
No
on social
kidding.
media. I'm like, keep it coming, keep it coming. And then the last one was the blueberry maple muffins.
Mm.
And that's from Tilly's up in Rhinelander. So it's like 3 completely different parts of the state. And I thought it would be a really nice celebration. I'm all about local, shopping local, promoting local. And what better way to do that through desserts?
I love it.
Yeah.
I loved the baking competition that you made up. I was like, why isn't this real?
Right?
Uh-huh.
Midwest Kids Baking
Yes!
competition.
The Marvelous Midwest Kids Baking Championship.
And then the abbreviation for it, it was really good world building because
Thank
I feel like the
you.
names and that thing that they were all into and all the like characters that are on, you know, like the people who've competed that everyone's into and like the host who they were all into.
Yes.
I was like,
Shane O'Shaughnessy.
Yes.
I mean,
With
like
his
these
pocket
names.
square and his dimples and his dazzling like eyes and slicked back hair. Yes.
This is like Hunger Games level world
Yes.
building where I was like, I can see all of this. I can like see these characters. It feels very real, but also very like whimsical and magical at the same time. I just loved it.
Thank you.
So do you watch baking shows even though you don't bake yourself?
So I do sort of. Really, my gateway into that world has been Top Chef. I'm a
Oh,
huge
yeah.
Top Chef fan, and they do bake
Me
on Top
too.
Chef. And I would say more than like the baking shows specifically, I love watching people get into their flow state,
Mm.
whatever it is, whether it's baking, whether it's cooking. I love Project Runway. At least
Oh,
I did
yeah.
way back in the day. I don't even know if it's on anymore, but you know, people making their garments and these beautiful
Mhm.
designs. I think it is riveting to watch people come up with ideas and be so creative and get into that flow state where like the rest of the world just completely vanishes. Like that is magical to me. And I wanted to convey that in my book, like what that looks like for someone.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you actually talked about it and defined it though. That was another thing where I was like,
yeah.
I didn't know that you could talk about flow state with middle
Uh-huh.
graders.
Why not?
But like
Right.
you're not talking down to anyone in the tone or in the content of the book. I just
Yeah.
loved it.
Yeah.
We have to talk about the setting.
The setting.
The setting.
Yeah.
Your upper Midwest small town.
Mhm.
You hit all the Wisconsin tropes. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's so much fun.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, I'm a Wisconsin girl,
Right.
like born and raised. I love Wisconsin. And I think people in our state, people in the Midwest, need to see themselves reflected in the pages of
Mhm.
books,
Mhm.
like in a really positive way. We're not flyover country. We are like an amazing place. And Wisconsin in particular has an amazing literary tradition and
Mhm.
authors live here. Like, I want to celebrate that, right?
Yes.
I feel like that's a good transition into talking about the Great Midwest Book Group.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. So not only do I love to write about Wisconsin and the Midwest, that's really important to me. I love to read authors and books that celebrate our area and don't knock us, right, for being like in the middle of the country. And so I have a friend. She's an Instagram friend. I've never met her face to face, but we've known each other for years. Her name is Gail, and she lives in Indiana. And we were sort of bemoaning this fact, like that, oh, it's another book where like the Midwest is just completely like,
I mean,
know,
it's something
crapped
we
upon.
fight too.
Yeah.
yes,
Like, all the
right?
time.
It's
Yeah.
a real thing. And we decided to come up with a solution. And so we created the Great Midwest Book Group. We're based in Instagram, so you can follow us on Instagram, although you can also follow us on Facebook, but we're much more active kind of in the Instagram community. We meet quarterly-ish, and it's all via Zoom. We have people from all across the country, not just the Midwest, which is incredible.
Yeah.
And we spotlight a book and an author that celebrates the Midwest. And 3 out of our 4 times that we've met, we just formed this last year, so it's still pretty new. We have actually invited the author to join us on Zoom, and they have all said yes.
Wow.
And they have been amazing. Like, I'm talking Nicholas Butler, Christy Clancy, J. Ryan Stradal, Carol Dunbar,
Big
Leif
names
Enger. We have
in-
gotten some
yeah.
big names. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody. Next month, we are reading Rebecca McCanna's book, and it's called Don't Forget the Girl. And it's sort of like this strange hybrid, like sort of mystery, kind of missing girl, kind of a suspenseful psychological thriller. It's different for us because we've kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
stuck with literary fiction. but she's going to join us. She teaches in Indianapolis, and it's amazing. The book takes place in Iowa. So like we consciously are trying to hit like
all the states.
all the areas. So wish us luck as we do that. But anyone's welcome to join us. You just zoom in. I mean, it's like low stakes. You can keep your camera off if you want, but people are really excited about it. I feel like we're filling a need.
That's amazing.
And that could be something that grows into like doing an in-person festival or doing a right.
Ooh,
I mean,
Molly.
I feel like the more you get people engaged, it's such a broad category. Like you said, it could be lit fic, it can be, but there's people in the Midwest writing every genre.
Right.
And we have really great like romantasy writers in Wisconsin. We have great sci-fi. I can think of like there's like one at least I don't know if he's in Madison, but like J.S. Dews has a really popular sci-fi series, and he's definitely nearby. So I'm like, anyway, I just think it could
everyone's every genre is represented. I think in Wisconsin.
Yeah,
YA. I mean, it's all here.
Okay, we should probably talk about the Wisconsin Book Festival because we just saw you earlier this week at the reveal party, and you are an ambassador this year.
I've been an ambassador for a number of years, and I love it.
Okay.
I love it. I love supporting their efforts. I mean, Jane Rotunda is the head of Wisconsin Book Festival. She's doing an amazing job. Connor Moran's the head of the foundation. I mean, I would do anything for them because they are, talk about like celebrating books and storytelling. Absolutely. We are so lucky to live in Madison where this is right. It's like right in our backyard. All these events are taking place, well, unless noted. And you can go to the Wisconsin Book Festival website for a complete listing for the 3-day celebration, which is in October. Everything's more or less at Central Library. Free. You just show up. You don't have to RSVP. You can sit in a chair or you can stand at the back of the room. You get to ask questions of the authors. It's brilliant. People
Sometimes
need to
get
come.
Free books.
Sometimes you get free books.
You can buy books from the wonderful indie booksellers who will be there. We are also a partner with Wisconsin Book Festival, and we will be selling actually at the off-site locations this year. So if you go to an event at the Arts and Lit Lab or at the Wisconsin Historical Society or at the Discovery Institute, then you will see either Jamie or I there.
We'll be there.
Having fun and enjoying the author events and selling the books for those events.
Thank you for doing that.
Oh,
because
we're
it
so
is
excited to be part of
great
it.
Collaboration.
Yeah.
And I should also mention at Central Branch, there will be a coffee cart. Were you there last year when the coffee cart was there?
I volunteered last year, and the coffee cart was a pleasant surprise.
Amazing.
Yes.
Like that's going to be there again this year. Like you get like free drinks. You can just go up and, I don't know, order a latte.
Yeah.
Wait, they're free?
Yes.
Yes. The lovely barista just whips them up for you.
That part enough.
No.
I feel
Well,
like when
I'm
they say there's
stressing
a
it.
coffee cart, because I was like, yeah, okay, but you could also just like walk over to Fair Trade or whatever.
No,
but I'm
it's
like,
free.
no, there's free coffee
From Cafe Domestique, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Mhm.
Just a little marketing note for the book festival. And you are doing a good job as ambassador because I
Thank
didn't
you.
know that
Thank you.
before you came on.
Yeah.
And now I know
Right?
that it's free and I'm more inclined to
Yeah.
go get some free coffee.
Yet when Jane announced that at the author reveal party the other day, there will be a coffee cart. Like people were like, yay. I mean, people cheered. The coffee cart is like a huge hit. So that's a new
Absolutely.
addition. That was a new addition last year and she nailed it.
Are there any? We're gonna be hyping the Wisconsin Book Festival for the next couple episodes because we're having Jane Rotunda on.
Oh, how wonderful.
We're super excited to talk to her. But are there any author events that you're particularly excited about?
So Rufy Thorpe
Mhm.
is coming. Margot's got money trouble. Am I getting the name right? I haven't actually read it yet. I want to read it so bad.
That's
We
right.
reserved a copy for you.
Thank
in
you,
case
because I
need
told
to
you the
take
other
it
day
home.
I
There's
wanted
a
a
copy
copy.
waiting.
So we have one
So
for you.
that's
Don't
who
worry.
I'm most excited about.
And it's the last copy in the store because I also bought one of those.
Yay!
We've got
love
more
that.
coming
I
for
love
those
that.
listening.
Right.
It'll be back in stock by the time you hear this.
But the sad thing, I was really looking at the schedule. I actually can't make her talk. And Christy Clancy,
Is
dear friend of mine,
her
she's her
conversation
conversation
partner.
partner. Because I will be, boo for me, actually not really, this is wonderful. I will be at the Tornado Room, at the Corral Room down in the basement
Yes.
at that very time, because as an ambassador, I am responsible for coordinating and hosting the cocktail party for all the authors in town. We provide this awesome cocktail party for them. They can come and get a martini. They can get some appetizers, some desserts. It's really fun. But that's kind of my responsibility for the weekend.
Such a fun location to do that.
I know. Oh, it's fabulous.
Yeah.
So I can't see Roofie, but I get to be at the Tornado
Right.
Room,
I'll have to let you know how it is.
Yeah. Thank you.
Unsurprisingly, that was the big event that I went to at the Wisconsin Book Festival last year, was the author cocktail party in the Tornado Room basement.
And did you have a blast?
Yeah, it was so fun.
course
I
you
was like
did.
starstruck. Like, okay, I guess I'm gonna just chat with a couple of famous
you
authors who
are.
are around here. I have a bookstore that's 4 months old at that point. So it was
really fun.
really exciting.
It was really fun seeing you too.
Yeah. I'll probably try to sneak in this year.
Please do.
too.
I'll be there. I'll welcome
I was
you.
gonna say, Laura,
I'll give
will
you a
sneak
glass
me
of
in.
wine.
Yeah.
Whatever you want. You're there. We got you.
I have a question. Do you do audio?
I don't do audio. I am really old school. I like hard paper copy in my hands. Audio is hard for me. I think it's because I'm a very like visual learner. I like to see what I'm reading.
Mm-hmm.
And also I find that I know a lot of people listen to podcasts and listen to books. I have to have a lot of silence. And so I think when other people like are taking walks doing that, I'm taking a walk in silence because it helps ground me and it makes me a better writer, I think, and also a better reader. So I don't do audiobooks. That was a long answer to your very short question.
That was fascinating.
Yeah.
I think the concept of walking in silence is like very brave.
Right? I need to like silence myself sometimes. So that's why I turn to audiobooks and
Correct.
podcasts.
But I have found about myself recently that I just like put a podcast on the minute I wake up, and I always have some audio on. And then I started doing some swimming like in a pool, and you can't listen to anything, right? So like normally when I work out, no matter how I'm working out, I'm listening to something. And I was like, oh, it's silent. And it was like a magical 30 minutes. And I really relate to what you're saying, where I'm like, I need more silence in my life. And I don't know how to cultivate that in my current, I'm so addicted to podcasts. I'm so addicted to noise, I feel like, that I need to figure out how to shut that down. So maybe I could do like a silent walk.
Yeah.
I think you'll get a lot out of it.
Wow.
I believe in the concept of noise pollution. Like for
Oh,
me, that's
okay.
a real thing.
Oh, yeah.
There are times I drive in silence too, which is kind of crazy, but it works. And I think for me, it's become like this mental health self-care strategy. Like I think when I can have silence, I really am a better human being. So
Good for you.
yeah, take a walk. Just go in silence. It's wonderful.
Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Goodness, we've covered a lot of ground.
We did.
I don't think so. I think always I just want people to read. Put down their screens, pick up a book. Makes you smarter, makes you more empathetic. It opens your whole view of the world. Especially parents, read, model that for your kids.
Mm-hmm.
Great point. Don't just read to your kids. Show your kids that reading is one of your hobbies and read on your
Exactly.
own.
Yeah, have plentiful stacks of books throughout your household.
Mm-hmm.
Come shop at Lake City Books.
Yep.
Use
Great
your
tip.
public library.
Yep.
You know, when you go to the doctor and you're waiting in the lobby, instead of scrolling on your phone, pack a tote bag and pull out a book.
I have so many books on me at all times. It's not
Right?
even funny.
Oh, I do
Same.
too. Mm-hmm.
All right, everybody, check out Marvelous Jackson out this week and also Crossing the Pressure Line. Go on Instagram and follow Great Midwest Book Group.
And at Laura at the
Laura
library.
at the library. Yep.
Thank you so
Thank
much for being
you.
here. This was such a lovely chat.
You both are lovely. Keep up the great work.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Laura.
Thank you. All right, see you at the bookstore. Bye.
Bye. Book Pop Podcast is presented by Lake City Books. Produced by Jamie Anderson and Molly Fish. Edited by Jamie Anderson. Music and art by Lovick. Follow us on Instagram at bookpop.podcast. Find out more at our website, bookpoppodcast.com.